Now, imagine living with a secret that could get you killed if it was found out. It's a feeling our next guest knows all too well.
Last year, we met Aussie filmmaker Jordan Bryon, who was given unprecedented access to live amongst the Taliban in Afghanistan, right after the fall of Kabul.
It just became a ghost town overnight. I mean, hundreds of thousands were trying to get out of the country.
Being embedded amongst a terrorist organisation may sound confronting enough, but to top it off, Jordan was also undergoing gender reassignment in a place where transitioning is punishable by death.
We were embedded with a Taliban unit making a film for the New York Times, and we spent 9 months going to this village and staying with them for weeks at a time, and I had breasts at the time. They didn't know that.
Now, Jordan's documentary, Transition, is chronicling his incredible journey.
Should I
go through the men's or the women's security check?
Woman.
But that's also really scary because it's reinforcing again and again to the Taliban unit that runs the airport that I'm a woman.
Telling his story of gaining freedom in the unlikeliest of places.
The tragic irony is that this country, Afghanistan, it's erasing women, it's erasing their identity, but it gave me my identity.
It's an incredible story, and Jordan himself is here to tell us all about it. Jordan, congrats on the doco. And the irony here is that you would never have been embedded with the Taliban if you were a woman. How close, if ever, were you to being found out?
I mean, the Taliban and, I mean, Eastern men generally are often very affectionate with each other, and they're quite physically close with each other. So there were many times where, you know, we were sleeping under the same blanket or wrestling or, you know, joking around, and then, you know, there was body contact. So there were quite a few times that were a bit touch and go.
Jordan, most people would know the Taliban as a terrorist organisation, but in your time with them, were you surprised by any of the people behind the movement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, every organisation is made up of lots of individuals, right? And the Taliban as an organisation as a whole are horrendous, but there are some decent human beings in that organisation as well, and particularly some of the guys from the unit that we were spending time with, you know, they had good qualities about them as well, but their extremist beliefs are obviously extremist, and the oppression of women and everything is still there. But I think as a filmmaker, people sometimes criticise our work because we're humanising the bad guys, but I think there's like a misunderstanding of what humanising means, because really we're asking people to hold the brutality of these people and the tenderness that they also have.
In the film, we meet the doctor helping you with your transition. Are you still in contact with them at all, or do you worry about them now the film is out?
Yeah, I'm still in touch with everybody in the film, including the Talibs as well. Dr. J is an absolute bloody legend of a human. I did offer to try and get him evacuated like many months ago, but he refused. He said that it's time for him to really dig his heels in and do the work that needs to be done in Afghanistan, so he didn't want to be evacuated. I saw him a few months ago when I slipped into Afghanistan for a project, and he's not well, though. He's extremely stressed and run down.
I'm curious that you're saying you slipped back into Afghanistan for a project. Is it safe for you to do that, given that this is now out in the world?
Yeah, well, I've been monitoring local social media and if there's anything on social media in the local languages, because once it's there, absolutely it won't be safe for me to go back. And really, even now, it's not safe for me to go back, because if the film did become active on local social media while I was in the country, that could be disastrous.
Obviously, very strong views in Afghanistan to you and what you've gone through in life. You're from a small country town in regional Australia. How do you compare the attitudes? Obviously, this film has now been seen where you're from.
Yeah, I mean, Narendra is a beautiful little town. It's obviously now it's 2024. When I go back there, I'm astounded at like seeing younger queer people on the streets and in school, because when I was a kid growing up there, it was not accepted and not tolerated. And I mean, I've got scars on my back from having people throwing rocks at me and calling me horrendous names. In Afghanistan, there's not a lot of knowledge / any knowledge about LGBT people and communities. And so in some ways, it's easier to fly under the radar there. But for me, because there was no knowledge about LGBT people there, the labels that have followed me around everywhere else in the world didn't follow me there, and it kind of freed me up to find myself as a trans person, actually, which is a kind of bizarre irony that, of all places, Afghanistan is the place that enabled me to do that.
The story of transitioning while embedded with the Taliban is so fascinating, you couldn't not make a film about it. Like, that is absolutely incredible. But how do you top that for your next project?
Oh my God, that's a great question. I'm asking myself the same thing. I feel like, and I mean, an audience member gave the film a really great review. He said, if a writer scripted this story and took it to executives to make the film, the executives would laugh them out of the studio because the premise is just so absurd. But here we are, it happens. Like, truth is stranger than fiction, right? My next project, I'm working on a project with a former ISIS fighter. Again, another very nuanced story that will have a lot of surprisingness in it, and we'll ask audiences to balance the good and the bad in these people.
A romantic comedy then.
Yeah, it turns into a go-go boy at the end.
Oh, Jordan, you are incredible. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
What an unbelievable story. And I wonder if the Talibs that he was spending time with find out this story, whether it will in any way make them think differently about how they think about the queer community or trans people. You know, because they have a relationship with him and would think about him personally, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that would be a big leap from what their starting point would be.
But you know, all of those morons who are like have all this judgment, and then they meet someone, they're like, oh, you're not that bad.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
No.
Incredible.
Out on a limb again. Classic me. Don't worry, guys. I'll just be here all night.